When you stop caring, everything starts to work out. It sounds strange, doesn't it? Because we're taught our whole lives to care about people's opinions, care about fitting in, care about what others think of us. We're told that caring means we're responsible, disciplined, mature. But somewhere along the way, we start carrying a weight that was never ours to hold. We care so much about the wrong things. We forget to live for the right ones. The truth is, most of the stress, anxiety, and overthinking we deal with comes from caring too much about things that don't truly matter. You're worried about what they'll say, how they'll judge you, whether they'll like you. You bend over backward to please everyone, and at the end of the day, you're left empty because no matter how hard you try, someone will still find a reason to criticize you. Someone will always misunderstand your intentions. Someone will always think you're not enough, but the moment you stop caring about their noise, the gossip, the judgment, the fake expectations, that's the moment everything begins to shift. You start to breathe differently. You start to walk taller. You stop apologizing for existing. When you stop caring about what doesn't serve your growth, you start caring about what actually matters. Peace, purpose, progress. When you stop caring whether people approve of your path, you finally start walking it. You begin to trust your instincts. You start to listen to that quiet voice inside you that's been drowned out by the world's opinions. And that voice, that inner knowing, it's powerful. It's the voice that says, you're enough. It's the voice that reminds you that you don't need validation to be valuable. You know what happens when you stop caring about being liked? You become respected because people can sense when you're no longer desperate for approval. They can sense when you're grounded in who you are. You no longer need to chase love, opportunities, or recognition. They start coming to you. That's the irony of life. When you stop trying to control everything, the right things naturally fall into place. Think about it. How many times have you chased something only for it to run away from you? And how many times have you let go and suddenly it found its way back? That's not coincidence. That's clarity. When your energy stops being scattered across meaningless worries, it starts to attract what aligns with you. When you stop caring, you stop forcing. You stop begging people to see your worth. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop waiting for permission to be happy. And you realize that the power has always been in your hands, not theirs. It's not about becoming cold or emotionless. It's not about not caring at all. It's about caring strategically, caring about your growth, your peace, your truth, and letting go of everything that doesn't nourish that. You learn to choose your battles. You learn to protect your energy. You learn that silence can be more powerful than argument. And you learn that walking away doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise. Because when you stop caring about how things should be, you start appreciating how they are. You stop chasing timelines and start living in your own rhythm. You stop comparing your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20. You stop needing to prove yourself because your results start doing the talking. When you stop caring, you free yourself from invisible chains. The fear of judgment no longer paralyzes you. The opinions of others no longer dictate your choices. You no longer crumble when someone disapproves of you. You simply nod, smile, and keep moving because you've learned that the people who truly matter will understand and those who don't never will. And in that space of not caring about the unnecessary, something incredible happens. You start to grow. Your confidence expands. Your peace deepens. Your focus sharpens. You attract better relationships, better opportunities, better energy. Because the universe tends to reward those who stop clinging and start trusting. So Stop caring about being perfect. Stop caring about impressing people who wouldn't clap for you anyway. Stop caring about the doors that closed. They were never yours. Care instead about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to be understood by everyone because they understand themselves. When you stop caring, you stop chasing, and what's meant for you starts finding its way home. Freedom begins the moment you stop seeking validation from others. For most of your life, you've probably been taught that approval equals worth. From a young age, you were rewarded for fitting in, for following the rules, for doing what pleased others. You were told that if people liked you, then you were doing something right. So you began shaping yourself according to what would make others happy. You learned how to blend in, how to avoid disapproval, how to say the right things so no one would judge you. But what no one told you was that in trying to please everyone, you quietly lose yourself. You start trading authenticity for acceptance, and then the more you chase validation, the further you drift from your truth. When you live for other people's approval, your entire identity becomes fragile. Every compliment lifts you. Every criticism crushes you. Your emotions are at the mercy of external reactions. One negative comment can undo your confidence. One silent disapproval can make you question your value. You're constantly analyzing yourself, wondering if you said too much or not enough. If you're too loud or too quiet, too much or too little, that's the prison of validation. It conditions you to measure your worth through someone else's perception instead of your own truth. But something changes when you start realizing that people's opinions are just reflections of their own insecurities, not accurate mirrors of your worth. Everyone sees you through the lens of their own experiences, fears, and limitations. What someone admires in you, another person may criticize, and neither perspective defines who you are. The moment this truth sinks in, you begin to detach from the need to please. You understand that your job is not to be understood or liked by everyone. Your job is to be honest with yourself. You start focusing on your own compass instead of constantly looking around to see who's nodding in approval. Freedom begins when you stop performing for validation. You stop filtering your personality to make it more digestible. You stop walking on eggshells, afraid of being too bold, too confident, too real. You begin to speak with conviction instead of hesitation. You begin to live in alignment with what feels right to you, even if others don't agree. Because approval doesn't equal authenticity, and without authenticity, no amount of praise will fill you. You can have a crowd cheering your name and still feel unseen if you're not being yourself. When you stop seeking validation, rejection no longer terrifies you. You stop viewing it as a reflection of failure and start seeing it as redirection. You start realizing that being disliked by some people is simply the cost of being genuine. Not everyone will resonate with your truth, and that's okay. You don't need universal approval. You just need inner alignment. Every time you stand firm in your truth, instead of bending for acceptance, you reclaim a part of your freedom. Freedom is not loud. It's quiet confidence. It's walking into a room without needing to be the most liked person there. It's making choices without explaining them to those who will never understand. It's realizing that peace is more valuable than popularity. It's choosing to live by your principles even when it means standing alone. Because true confidence doesn't come from others believing in you. It comes from you believing in yourself when no one else does. When you stop seeking validation, your energy shifts. You stop chasing and start attracting. The right people begin to notice you, not because you tried to please them, but because your authenticity stands out. People are naturally drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin. There's something magnetic about someone who doesn't need approval to feel secure. That kind of confidence commands respect without demanding it. You start to notice how much lighter life feels when you're no longer waiting for permission to be yourself. You don't overthink every decision or replay every conversation in your head. You stop apologizing for your boundaries, your dreams, your standards. You understand that your value isn't negotiable, and you stop handing it out for people to validate or deny. You no longer measure your success by how many people clap for you, but by how aligned you feel with your own truth. Validation becomes irrelevant when self-awareness becomes your foundation. You stop seeking praise for every move because you're grounded in purpose. You learn that some of the most meaningful moments in life happen in silence when no one is watching or cheering, but you know deep down that you did the right thing. You start defining success not by how it looks to others, but by how it feels to your soul. When you stop seeking validation, criticism loses its power. It doesn't mean you become arrogant or closed off. It means you learn how to separate constructive feedback from emotional projection. You can listen, evaluate, and adjust when necessary without letting it break your confidence. You no longer crumble under disapproval because you know your worth doesn't depend on anyone's comfort. You understand that validation-driven living is just a form of control. And the moment you stop needing it, no one can control you anymore. Freedom is realizing that not everyone will understand your choices, and that's perfectly fine. Some people will judge you because your confidence reminds them of their own fears. Others will misunderstand your silence, your ambition, or your boundaries, but none of that is your problem to fix. Your responsibility is to stay true to yourself, to keep showing up in integrity, regardless of who applauds or walks away. When you stop seeking validation, you stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You stop waiting for someone to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. You stop looking for proof that you're enough because you finally believe it. And that's when life begins to unfold naturally. You start seeing opportunities appear, relationships align, and peace settle in your mind because freedom has nothing to do with what people think of you and everything to do with what you think of yourself. Letting go of control creates space for what's truly meant for you. Most people spend their lives trying to control everything around them, their relationships, their reputation, their timing, their outcomes. They want to plan every step, predict every reaction, and force every door to open exactly when they want it to. But the harder you try to control life, the more resistance you create. You start holding on so tightly that nothing can flow naturally. You begin to confuse control with power, but they are not the same. Control is rooted in fear, in the belief that if you don't manage everything, it will all fall apart. Power, on the other hand, is trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the process, trust that what's meant for you will come, even if you stop chasing it. When you live with the illusion of control, you carry an invisible tension everywhere you go. You analyze every detail, second guess every choice, worry about things that haven't even happened yet. You start living in a constant state of anxiety, thinking if you just try harder, push harder, plan better, everything will go your way. But life doesn't bend under pressure. It bends under flow. The things meant for you will never require you to beg or force them. They align when you're ready, not when you're desperate. There's a calm strength that comes from letting go of control. It's not about giving up. It's about giving in to timing that's bigger than your understanding. It's realizing that some things are delayed not because you're unworthy, but because they're preparing you for something greater. When you stop trying to manipulate outcomes, you begin to notice how life naturally aligns opportunities with your growth. You stop asking, why is this not happening yet? And start understanding, maybe I'm not meant to have it yet. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring about your goals. It means you stop obsessing over the road to get there. You do the work, you show up, you stay consistent, but you release the outcome. You stop trying to control who stays, who leaves, who loves you, or who doesn't. Because people are not possessions, they are experiences. They come to teach, to reflect, to guide. And when their role is done, they leave. Holding on too tightly to what's meant to go only creates pain. Letting go creates peace, and that peace allows space for new energy to enter. When you let go of control, you allow life to surprise you. You start realizing that not getting what you wanted was often the best thing that could have happened. The job you lost, the relationship that ended, the plan that failed, all of it created the space for something better to take shape. You can't receive what's meant for you if your hands are still clenched around what's not. You can't move forward if you're still anchored to what's behind you. Control tricks you into believing that you're keeping things safe, but in truth, you're keeping yourself stuck. There's beauty in uncertainty when you stop fearing it. The unknown becomes exciting instead of terrifying. You start waking up with curiosity rather than anxiety. You learn to breathe through moments that don't make sense, trusting that clarity will come in time. You begin to recognize that not everything needs to be solved immediately. Some answers unfold slowly, and sometimes silence is its own message. Letting go of control also means letting go of people's reactions. You stop trying to make everyone understand your choices. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You stop fighting for attention in places where your presence is already undervalued. You understand that your peace is too expensive to waste on convincing others to see your value. You begin to master the art of detachment, not from life, but from the need to control how life unfolds. When you surrender control, you gain clarity. You start seeing patterns, lessons, and opportunities that were once blurred by your own resistance. You begin to notice that every delay carried a lesson, every rejection redirected you, and every ending cleared the path for something stronger. You realize that peace doesn't come from knowing how things will work out. It comes from trusting that they will. Control is fear disguised as discipline. It's the belief that if you stop managing every detail, everything will fall apart. But when you finally loosen your grip, you discover that life has its own rhythm, one that doesn't need your constant interference. You realize that the universe operates with precision, and when you stop interrupting it with fear, it delivers exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. Letting go doesn't mean you stop taking action. It means you take action without attachment. You put your energy into effort, not outcome. You give your best, but you stop trying to script the story. You stop asking, what if it doesn't work? And start asking, what if it works better than I imagined? You learn to find peace in the process instead of anxiety in the waiting. Sometimes the reason things don't move forward is because you're holding on to them too tightly. The universe can't give you something new while your hands are full of what's no longer serving you. Letting go creates space for better people, better opportunities, better energy. It allows you to evolve instead of repeating the same cycles. The moment you stop forcing things to happen, the right ones begin to. You start noticing that the right doors open quietly. The right people stay effortlessly. The right opportunities feel aligned, not pressured. Life becomes smoother, not because it gets easier, but because you stop fighting it. You begin to live from a place of flow instead of fear, and that flow creates miracles you could never have planned. Letting go of control is about learning to trust timing. It's understanding that growth takes time, healing takes time, alignment takes time. You stop rushing to reach the destination and start appreciating the journey. You start realizing that what's meant for you doesn't need to be chased, only recognized. You stop questioning every setback and start asking what it's teaching you. There's a certain quiet strength in letting go. It's the courage to say, I don't know how this will turn out, but I trust that it will be okay. It's the peace that comes when you stop fighting for control and start choosing surrender. It's the awareness that forcing what isn't meant for you only delays what is. And it's the wisdom to know that when you release what's not aligned, you make room for everything that is. Caring less about opinions allows you to focus on peace, purpose, and progress. Most people don't realize how much of their life is controlled by the opinions of others. They make choices not because they want to, but because they're afraid of what others might say. If they don't, they hide their ambitions, so no one calls them arrogant. They silence their voice, so no one labels them difficult. They stay small because standing tall makes others uncomfortable. But the truth is, every time you let someone's opinion dictate your direction, you hand over a piece of your power. You become a passenger in your own life instead of the driver. You start living to be accepted rather than to be fulfilled. The moment you stop caring about what people think, you start seeing how much energy you've wasted trying to impress them. You begin to notice how often you've said yes when you wanted to say no, how many times you've pretended to be fine just to appear strong, how many dreams you've delayed because someone told you they were unrealistic. Opinions are cheap and endless, but your peace is priceless. When you care too much about what everyone thinks, you end up chasing approval that changes with every mood, every rumor, every face. But when you start caring less, you begin to center your energy around things that actually matter, your growth, your peace, your purpose. Caring less doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means developing emotional discipline. It means understanding that not every comment deserves a reaction. Not every insult requires a defense. Not every person's perspective holds weight in your life. You start realizing that some people will criticize you no matter what you do. If you succeed, they'll call you lucky. If you fail, they'll call you foolish. So you stop trying to win a game that can't be won. You stop chasing validation and start choosing alignment. When you stop caring about opinions, your mind becomes quieter. The noise that once lived in your head, the constant overthinking, the endless replaying of conversations, the fear of being misunderstood begins to fade. You no longer carry the burden of trying to manage how others see you. You start living for truth instead of perception. You begin to understand that people's opinions of you are shaped by their own limitations, their own fears, their own stories. Their judgments are rarely about you. They're about themselves. And when that realization sinks in, you stop taking things personally. Caring less gives you clarity. You start focusing on your own path instead of comparing it to someone else's. You stop measuring your progress by external applause and start finding fulfillment in silent victories. You realize that peace doesn't come from being admired. It comes from being authentic. You no longer need to be understood by everyone because you've learned to understand yourself. You stop explaining your dreams to people who can't see your vision because you know that not everyone is meant to. The more you detach from opinions, the more you reconnect with purpose. You begin asking different questions, not what will they think, but what feels right. You make decisions based on your values, not someone else's comfort. You choose your path with conviction, not fear. You start showing up as your true self instead of the version you think people will accept. And as you do, the right people begin to notice, not because you're trying to please them, but because authenticity has its own gravity. It attracts what belongs and repels what doesn't. When you stop caring about what others think, you stop wasting time trying to prove your worth. You realize you have nothing to prove to anyone who doubts you. Your worth doesn't fluctuate based on someone's approval. It doesn't rise with praise or fall with criticism. It simply exists. And when you operate from that understanding, you begin to move differently. You make choices that align with peace instead of pressure. You set boundaries without guilt. You walk away from what drains you without explanation. You start prioritizing your mental and emotional well-being over being liked. Caring less about opinions teaches you to value solitude. Because when the noise quiets, you finally hear your own voice again. You rediscover what makes you come alive, what drives you, what gives you meaning. You stop molding yourself into shapes that fit other people's expectations. You start embracing the edges that make you unique. You learn that authenticity might isolate you at first, but it eventually surrounds you with the right energy, people who respect your truth rather than demand your compliance. As you stop caring about outside noise, your focus sharpens. You become more productive because your energy is no longer scattered between pleasing people and second guessing yourself. You become more creative because you're no longer afraid of judgment. You start taking risks, speaking your mind, and following ideas that once felt too bold. You start living with intention instead of hesitation. Because the fear of opinions no longer controls your moves, you become unstoppable in pursuing what fulfills you. Caring less also transforms how you handle criticism. You stop reacting defensively because you've learned to separate feedback from noise. You can listen calmly, take what's useful, and discard the rest. You understand that not every voice deserves access to your emotions. You become selective with whose opinions matter, mentors who push you to grow, friends who speak with honesty, not judgment. You build an internal filter that protects your peace while allowing wisdom to pass through. When you stop caring about opinions, you gain emotional freedom. You stop being swayed by gossip or silence, praise or rejection. You remain grounded, centered, consistent. You learn that peace is not found in being liked, but in being true. You stop trying to fit into places where you were never meant to belong. You stop changing yourself to make others comfortable. You stop explaining your worth to people who have already decided not to see it. You start walking away from anything that costs you your peace because you finally realize peace is progress. Progress doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like walking away quietly. Sometimes it looks like choosing calm over chaos. But every time you choose peace over validation, you grow stronger. You stop living for the world's applause and start living for your own sense of alignment. You stop asking, do they approve of me? And start asking, do I respect who I'm becoming? Caring less about opinions isn't about arrogance. It's about freedom. It's about choosing not to let noise define your worth. It's about walking your path with confidence, knowing that peace, purpose, and progress thrive in silence, not in spectacle. It's about understanding that the more you focus on what truly matters, the less space you have for what doesn't.